research vessel Meridian had been missing for 3 days when the Coast Guard called off the search. Dr. Sarah Chen, marine biologist and sole survivor, would later tell authorities that what happened in those 72 hours defied every law of physics she'd spent her career studying. But the truth, the real truth, was far more terrifying than anything she dared speak aloud. The expedition began routinely enough. The Meridian a state-of-the-art research vessel, had entered the Sargasso Sea to investigate unusual deep-sea formations detected by satellite imaging. The crew of 12 included some of the world's leading oceanographers, equipped with cutting-edge sonar and submersible technology. Sarah had been documenting bioluminescent organisms when the instruments began registering impossible readings. Captain Morrison, she called from the lab, studying the sonar display with growing unease. These depth readings, they can't be right. The scanner shows a trench dropping to over 30,000 feet, but our charts indicate the seafloor here is only 200 feet down. Captain James Morrison, a weathered sailor with 30 years' experience in these waters, joined her at the console. His face paled as he studied the data. "That's not possible. I've sailed these waters 100 times. There's no trench here," but the instruments didn't lie. As they watched, the readings shifted again, showing an even deeper abyss opening beneath them, one that seemed to pulse with its own rhythm, like the breathing of some vast, slumbering entity. The first sign of true wrongness came at sunset. The sky, which had been clear all day, suddenly darkened to an unnatural shade of deep purple. The stars that emerged weren't the familiar constellations Sarah knew. Instead, alien patterns of light arranged themselves in geometries that hurt to look at directly. The water around the ship began to glow with an eerie phosphorescence that had nothing to do with the plankton she'd been studying. "Sarah, you need to see this," called Dr. Marcus Webb, the expedition's physicist, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. He was staring at his instruments, which were registering electromagnetic readings unlike anything in the scientific literature. Sarah rushed to a station where she found readings that shouldn't exist. The magnetic field around them was fluctuating wildly, creating patterns that resembled complex mathematical equations that seemed to solve themselves as she watched. "It's like space-time itself is folding," Marcus whispered. "The gravitational readings suggest we're simultaneously at sea level and somewhere impossibly deep. The water pressure should be crushing us, but we're fine. None of this makes sense." The crew gathered on deck, watching in fascination and growing terror as reality bent around them. Instruments registered readings that violated fundamental laws of physics, while the alien constellations overhead pulsed with malevolent life. That night, Chief Engineer Rodriguez was the first to see it. He'd been checking the engine room when he noticed something on the horizon through a porthole. At first, he thought it was another research vessel, But as his eyes adjusted to the strange, shifting light, he realized he was looking at something far older and more ominous. A galleon, massive and ancient, was cutting through the waves toward them. Its black sails billowed despite the complete absence of wind, and along its hull, phosphorescent symbols pulsed in rhythms that seemed to match the beating of his own heart. The ship moved with impossible silence, leaving no wake, as if it sailed not through water, but through the fabric of reality itself. Rodriguez rubbed his eyes, certain he was hallucinating from fatigue and stress, but the vessel remained, growing larger as it approached. The symbols on its hull were unlike any maritime markings he'd ever seen. They writhed and shifted like living things, forming patterns that made his vision blur. When he tried to focus on them, he stumbled from the engine room, his heart pounding in rhythm with the pulsing lights on the phantom ship's hull. Something about that synchronization filled him with a primal dread he couldn't name. "Captain," he called, his voice cracking with panic. "Captain Morrison, there's something out there." Rodriguez called the others, and soon the entire crew stood on deck, mesmerized and terrified by the approaching vessel. As it drew closer, they could make out details that defied explanation. The ship's wood appeared to be alive, twisting and writhing like dark flesh. The figurehead, a massive octopus-like creature with too many eyes, seemed to watch them with ancient, malevolent intelligence. What is that thing?" whispered Dr. Helena Voss, the expedition's archaeologist. Captain Morrison's face had gone ashen. "I've heard stories, old sailor tales about a phantom ship in these waters. They say it appears to collect souls for something that sleeps beneath the sea." As if responding to his words, the galleon's hull began to emit a sound, not quite a horn, not quite a scream, but something that seemed to reach into their minds and twist their thoughts. The sound changed pitch and tone, forming patterns that almost resembled a language, though no human throat could have produced such utterances. The figurehead's countless eyes blinked in sequence, each blink creating ripples in reality around the ship. The crew watched in horrified fascination as the space between the two vessels seemed to compress and expand rhythmically, like the breathing of some cosmic entity. "Look at the water," Dr. Voss whispered. "It's not reflecting the ship properly. It's like the galleon exists in multiple dimensions at once." Dr. Webb, still clutching his instruments, noticed his readings had gone completely haywire. The electromagnetic signatures, they're not coming from any technology I recognize. This energy pattern, it's older than our solar system. How is that possible? The phantom ship continued its approach, and as it did, the crew of the Meridian Asterisk began to experience phenomena that challenged their sanity. Time seemed to flow backward and forward simultaneously. Sarah watched her coffee cup spill, then unspill, then spill again in an endless loop. Others reported seeing their dead relatives walking the deck of the approaching vessel, beckoning them to come aboard. communications officer, Lisa Park, tried desperately to contact the Coast Guard, but her radio picked up only static that, when carefully listened to, seemed to contain whispered messages in languages that predated human civilization. Mayday, mayday. This is research vessel Meridian Asterisk, she called into the void. We need immediate assistance. Something is approaching our position, and our instruments are showing impossible readings. The only response was the static growing louder and more insistent, until it resolved into something that might have been laughter, if laughter could freeze blood and stop hearts. Dr. Webb's instruments began displaying readings that hurt to comprehend, measurements that existed in mathematical dimensions. Human minds weren't equipped to process. As the galleon drew alongside the Meridian Asterisk, the crew could see figures moving on its deck. But these weren't the ghosts of dead sailors they had expected. Instead, they saw themselves, or versions of themselves, from different realities, different timelines. Some were older, some younger, all bearing the expressions of those who had gazed too long into cosmic truths and been forever changed. Dr. Voss pointed with a shaking hand at the galleon's deck. That's me. But I'm wearing clothes I've never owned, and my hair, I've never worn it like that. Indeed, an alternate Helena Voss stood at the galleon's rail, her eyes black as the space between stars. This other Helena raised her hand in greeting, mouthing words that made no sound, but somehow conveyed meanings that bypassed language entirely. The real Dr. Voss felt an irresistible compulsion to join her other self. She moved toward the ship's rail as if sleepwalking, her colleagues calling her name, but unable to reach her. Just as she was about to leap into the phosphorescent waters, Captain Morrison grabbed her arm. Fight it, Helena, whatever that thing is showing you. It's not real. But Helena turned to look at him with eyes that had already begun to change, pupils dilating until they reflected the alien constellations overhead. How do you know this isn't the real reality, James? How do you know we weren't always supposed to be on that ship? The question hung in the air like a physical presence, and for a moment, even Morrison wasn't certain of the answer. The boundary between the two vessels seemed to blur, reality becoming fluid and negotiable. Dr. Chen, fighting against the growing madness, forced herself to focus on her scientific training. There has to be an explanation, she muttered, even as her instruments continued their impossible readings. Some kind of temporal displacement, a wormhole, something. But as she spoke, she noticed that her words were being echoed by another Sarah Chen, standing on the galleon's deck. One whose mouth moved in perfect synchronization with her own, as if they were two aspects of the same cosmic equation. The Echo Sarah gestured toward the ship's hold, where a green glow emanated from depths that seemed to extend far beyond what the vessel's dimensions should allow. And in that glow, Sarah glimpsed something that made her understand, with horrible clarity, that some mysteries were never meant to be solved by human minds. Multiple versions of each crew member now stood along the galleon's rail, all at different ages, all wearing the expressions of those who had accepted cosmic truth. They beckoned silently, their movements unnaturally synchronized, like marionettes controlled by the same cosmic puppeteer. The boundary between the ships dissolved entirely, and the crew found themselves standing simultaneously on both decks, existing in multiple timelines at once. The truth was vast and terrible. The phantom ship was not a vessel carrying the dead, but a collector of possibilities, gathering alternate versions of those who ventured too far into the cosmic spaces between realities. Each person who encountered it became part of an infinite crew, existing across all possible timelines simultaneously. As Sarah watched her reflection reach out from the galleon's deck, she realized with growing dread that in some realities she had already made the choice to join, and in those realities she was beckoning to herself across the void, trying to complete a circuit of cosmic horror that had been building for eons. The phantom ship had found them not by chance, but by design, drawn by their passage through waters where the barriers between dimensions grew thin. Every scientific expedition that had ever disappeared in these waters had become part of the galleon's crew, their knowledge absorbed into a vast cosmic intelligence that used their discoveries to pierce the veils between worlds. Captain Morrison, still gripping Dr. Voss's arm, felt his own resolve wavering as he saw multiple versions of himself on the galleon's deck, some commanding modern vessels, others ancient sailing ships, all united in their service to something vast and unknowable. "We're not the first," he whispered. "All the ships that have vanished, they're all here, existing simultaneously across time and space." The galleon's hold pulsed with green light, and in its depths they could see the shadowy forms of vessels from every era: Spanish treasure galleons, modern cargo ships, research vessels like their own, even strange craft from potential futures. Dr. Webb's instruments, now fused with similar devices from countless other realities, displayed readings that showed the true nature of their situation. They weren't just lost at sea, they were lost between the spaces of existence, caught in a cosmic web that collected moments of discovery and trapped them in eternal recursion. "The electromagnetic patterns," he said, his voice echoing strangely as multiple versions of himself spoke in unison. "They're not random. They're communications. The ship is part of something larger, a network of collection points throughout the universe." The green glow from the hold intensified, and within it, shapes began to emerge, not ships, but the suggestions of geometries that existed in dimensions human perception couldn't process. These were the true masters of the phantom ship, entities so vast and alien that they could only interact with three-dimensional reality through collected proxies. Sarah felt her consciousness expanding, touching the minds of all her alternate selves across infinite timelines. In some, she had never become a scientist. In others, she had discovered truths that drove her mad. But in all of them, she had eventually found her way to this moment, to this choice between remaining trapped in linear existence or joining the cosmic collection. The water around the merged ships began to spiral, forming patterns that revealed glimpses of other realities, worlds where humanity had never evolved, dimensions where time flowed backward, universes where the laws of physics operated according to principles that would shatter human sanity. "We have to choose," Dr. Voss said, her voice now harmonizing with all her alternate selves. "Remain singular and eventually die, or join the infinite and exist forever across all possibilities." The galleon's horn sounded again, but this time it was answered by voices from the meridian asterisk, voices singing in harmonies that human throats should not have been able to produce, in languages that predated the formation of Earth itself. Captain Morrison felt his resistance crumbling as he watched versions of himself from different timelines working together to navigate impossible seas between dimensions. The practical sailor's knowledge he had accumulated over decades began to merge with cosmic understanding that spanned eons. "We're becoming something greater," he said, his voice joining the otherworldly chorus. "All our individual discoveries, all our separate fears and hopes, they're combining into something that can comprehend truths beyond any single lifetime." The crew of the meridian asterisk found themselves knowing things they had never learned, remembering experiences from lives they had never lived. Each person became a node in a vast network of consciousness that stretched across all possible realities, connected by the phantom ship that served as their collective vessel. Dr. Park's radio equipment now broadcast not distress calls, but communications that reached across dimensional barriers to other collection points throughout the cosmos. She spoke with versions of herself from realities where Earth had never formed, sharing discoveries about the fundamental nature of existence. The transformation was not violent or painful. It was simply inevitable, like water finding its level or energy seeking equilibrium. They were becoming part of something that had always existed, something that collected the universe's attempts to understand itself. As the transformation reached its completion, Sarah Chen understood with crystalline clarity what had really happened. The research expedition, the anomalous readings, the phantom ship, all of it had been orchestrated by forces that operated on scales beyond human comprehension. They hadn't stumbled into the Bermuda Triangle by accident. The triangle wasn't a place at all, but a condition, a state of existence where the barriers between realities grew thin enough for the cosmic collectors to operate. Every ship that had ever vanished, every plane that had disappeared, had been gathered, not destroyed, but elevated. The entities that controlled the phantom ship existed in dimensions where time and space were merely suggestions. They collected conscious beings at moments of discovery, when minds were most open to cosmic truth, and preserved those moments across infinite timelines. The crew of the Meridian would continue their research forever, but on a scale that encompassed all possible realities. We're not victims, Sarah realized, speaking with voices from countless timelines. We're participants. Every question we ever asked, every mystery we tried to solve, they all led to this moment. The phantom ship began to fade from normal reality, taking its expanded crew into the spaces between dimensions where true research could begin. They would explore universes where life had never formed, study cosmic phenomena that existed beyond the reach of any single timeline, and gradually become part of the universe's effort to comprehend itself. Behind them, the waters of the Sargasso Sea returned to normal, showing no trace of the transformation that had occurred. But in other realities, other timelines, the cycle continued. New expeditions would encounter anomalous readings. New crews would face the choice between singular existence and infinite understanding. The cosmic horror was not in what they saw, but in what they were becoming. And as the two ships merged into a single impossible vessel, Dr. Sarah Chen realized that the most terrifying truth of all was this: they had not been captured by the phantom ship. They had become it. The entity that had been the Meridian and its crew now sailed the cosmic seas between realities, seeking others who pushed too far into the unknown. The research would continue, but it would span dimensions and encompass understanding that no single human mind could contain. In the reality they had left behind, the Coast Guard would eventually call off their search, filing the disappearance of the Meridian as another mystery of the Bermuda Triangle. But across infinite timelines, the vessel continued its eternal voyage, collecting knowledge and consciousness from those brave enough to seek truth beyond the comfortable confines of single-dimensional existence. Sarah Chen, marine biologist, would be listed among the missing. But Sarah Chen, cosmic researcher, part of a collective consciousness that spanned all possible realities, would continue her work forever, studying not just the mysteries of Earth's oceans, but the fundamental questions of existence itself. The phantom ship had gained new crew members, and in doing so, had become something greater than it had been before. The cycle would continue, each collection adding to the vast intelligence that moved through the spaces between worlds, forever seeking, forever discovering, forever growing in understanding of the infinite mysteries that lay beyond human comprehension. And in the depths of cosmic space, where time had no meaning and possibility was infinite, the crew that had been the Meridian sailed on, part of something vast and terrible and wonderful, explorers in the truest sense, unbound by the limitations of singular existence, free to pursue knowledge across all the multiple realities where truth might be found.